For years now, OnePlus has been the go-to brand for anyone looking for a device with very few compromises. Since the brand's inception, the focus has been to deliver incredibly powerful hardware at a fraction of the cost of what most other companies charge for their devices. They haven't always hit the mark, but for the most part, their phones have been praised for their performance, fit and finish, and sheer power, which is a remarkable feat for a brand that's still considered to be one of the new kids on the block. But the OnePlus 7 Pro is a different beast than what we've seen from them in the past. They're not trying to play the underdog card anymore simply by checking all the right boxes while keeping the price low. No, this phone goes all out, challenging the biggest players in the space with no shame or hesitation. I'm Nick Gray from Phandroid, and after 90 days with the OnePlus 7 Pro, here is my full review. As with previous OnePlus devices, this phone is packed to the brim with all the latest and greatest tech. The highlights include a Snapdragon 855, a stunning 6.6-inch AMOLED display with a 90Hz refresh rate, enough RAM and storage to make your laptop jealous, a triple camera on the back, and a pop-up selfie camera so that you can truly have an edge-to-edge display with no notch, and a battery with enough juice to keep this thing running through a very long day. I'll be going into more detail on all of that in just a little bit, but first we have to address the phone's price to put all of this into context. The OnePlus 7 Pro is the most expensive device OnePlus has ever released, costing $670 for the base model. By flagship smartphone standards, that is a bargain. This phone's specs are comparable to those of the Galaxy S10 Plus, which sells for a cool grand. But loyal OnePlus customers will point out that it is $150 more expensive than last year's flagship, and the biggest price jump that we've seen from the company in a very long time. The good news is, though, the new price is justifiable for everything that's included, especially for Android enthusiasts who want the best of the best. The star of the show this year is the gorgeous display. Now, I have to admit that I'm typically not a sucker for needing the best display tech that's out there, but the panel that's used on the OnePlus 7 Pro is simply mesmerizing. Seeing it here doesn't do it justice, mainly because it's impossible to capture the Quad HD Plus resolution, which is also paired with a 90Hz refresh rate. While that may sound like a little bit of overkill or just a bunch of gibberish if you're not familiar with the terminology, but it means that it's the highest resolution display OnePlus has ever used, and the refresh rate on the panel is 90 times per second. Naturally, the high refresh rate is targeted towards the gaming crowd since it makes games look that much more amazing. But it's also noticeable simply when scrolling through Instagram or even your browser or any other application. The scrolling animations that you get are smoother than anything else we've seen on other devices, making this feel like you're holding something truly special in your hand. While notches and hole punch displays are all the rage these days, you won't find either on this phone. To preserve the integrity of the edge-to-edge panel, this device actually features a pop-up selfie camera, which only emerges from the top edge of the phone when it's needed. It's truly what we imagined phones of the future would look like for the last couple years. On the size front, the OnePlus 7 Pro is big. I mean, really big. There's no way around that. The company's gone from building largish devices to delivering a smartphone that's larger than the Samsung Galaxy Note 9, which by most standards is considered to be the big boy on the block. There's nothing inherently wrong with being big, but the decision to go this large will alienate a number of users. A variant with a 6-inch display would have been incredible. Fortunately, OnePlus did compensate for the phone's size by adding curved edges, which makes the phone a little bit more manageable. I honestly love the smoothness, but I do find that the curves can be annoying, especially with the extra glare that they add, which you typically don't get on other devices. But the phone's big footprint also means you get a larger battery inside. You get a 4000 mAh cell, which is more than enough for the phone to last you a full day on a single charge, and you can even go 2 full days if you don't mind doing a little bit of customization in the settings. Once you run the battery down enough to warrant a charge, the included warp charger can deliver power to the phone's battery at 30 amps, taking it from 0 to 50% in just 20 minutes. You can literally start charging the phone when you wake up in the morning while you're getting ready, and it'll last you until the next day. When it comes to performance, this phone definitely delivers. It's running on a Snapdragon 855 processor, which we all know is incredibly fast. But it also has 12 gigabytes of RAM, which means you'll never have issues with RAM management. It can hold dozens of apps in memory without even breaking a sweat. It goes without saying that the Snapdragon 855 processor inside the OnePlus 7 Pro is truly phenomenal. It can really handle anything that you throw at it. At this point, we're really waiting for game developers to step things up and deliver something that will truly push these processors to the limit. The last major point to touch on is the camera performance offered by the OnePlus 7 Pro. When the device was unveiled, they made a big deal about its grandiose DxOMark score and its multi-lens system, which was rated higher than that of the Galaxy S10 Plus. But upon testing things myself, I was mildly disappointed. Apparently, the software that shipped on the phone at launch wasn't the same one that was used by DxOMark to test the device. Since the phone was released, OnePlus has released at least 6 software updates to improve the camera quality of the device. But before we go into that, let's break down the camera setup and see what you get with this phone. This is the same Sony sensor that we've seen on about a dozen other flagship devices this year, which means that the images that you get out of it are pretty good. When using it in auto mode and comparing it to other flagship devices, OnePlus still comes up a little bit short, but only if you're doing side-by-side comparisons. The images that you get out of this phone are incredibly crisp, with white balance that's on point and colors that are typically pretty good if you don't mind an extra splash of saturation. But things do fall apart just a little bit in low light situations when you're comparing the OnePlus 7 Pro to other flagship devices, even when you're using the dedicated night mode. It's not quite as good as the Pixel's night sight feature, but is much better than what you would get with the standard setting on the OnePlus 7 Pro. Personally, my favorite part of the camera is the 13mm ultra-wide lens that allows you to capture some stunning panorama shots. The 16-megapixel camera sensor that's paired with it isn't as sharp as the main sensor, but you really can't tell unless you're zooming in to look at the details. I do wish that the performance in low-light situations was better as well, or if the night mode feature was allowed to be used with it. And another downside is that you also can't record video with the ultra-wide angle lens. The 3x zoom lens on the phone is decent as well if you're looking to capture images of something that's far away, but OnePlus was actually caught fudging the numbers here since the lens actually delivers 2.2 magnification and a 13 megapixel sensor then is cropped into 8 megapixel to give you the 3x zoom. The 2.2 magnification does kick in when you're capturing portrait shots on the phone. Those actually turn out really well. The magnification and the software do a really good job of isolating the foreground subject from the background. Naturally, there's still room for improvement, but this is definitely the best that we've seen from OnePlus. And that brings us to the pop-up front-facing camera, which definitely deserves to be in the spotlight as well. Mainly because it allows the phone to have an incredible edge-to-edge display experience up front, but also because the 16 megapixel sensor delivers really good shots as well. And it does have electronic image stabilization if you're looking to record video. Those worried about the durability of the pop-up mechanism will be pleased to know that there's a built-in drop detection system which pulls the camera back in if the phone detects that it's being dropped. Last but not least is the software experience that OnePlus is known for. Oxygen OS is as clean and customizable as ever. It's essentially stock Android with improvements baked in just in the right spots that give you a little bit more flexibility and power. This time around, we also have a few new features which expand the functionality of the device. The built-in screen recorder is something that OnePlus users have been clamoring for ages, and the new Zen mode essentially puts the phone into a 20-minute timeout, only allowing you to make emergency phone calls if needed. The feature is great for those who have issues with putting their phone down and simply need a break, but the lack of a manual override is a little bit frustrating at times. And then there's the incredible new Night Mode 2.0, which filters out blue light from the display and allows you actually to reduce the brightness to just 0.275 nits, which is perfect if you want to use the phone at night in the dark and don't want to light up the entire room. Those who have been waiting for a flagship device from OnePlus should be thrilled about this smartphone. It checks all the right boxes, especially the price. But like any other device that's out there, it still has its compromises. If you're willing to live with those compromises, the OnePlus 7 Pro is definitely the best smartphone that you can buy for under $700.